In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, me and my brother James are going to cover three prospects: Hunter Sallis, St. Thomas, and William Kyle. Three guys that I think are going to have a significant impact on draft boards this year, and they happen to be from our hometown of Omaha, Nebraska. So stay tuned to hear our thoughts on Hunter Sallis, St. Thomas, and William Kyle. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board. And my co-host for today is none other than my younger brother. People ask me all the time, like, who's older? My younger brother, James Barlowe.
Why would they think that, man? You got all that salt and pepper on your face, man,
But you got an old man swag, so that's probably what it is.
That's not necessarily true, man. You the one who's
anyway. And this episode is going to be interesting because we're going to talk about three guys that are legit NBA prospects. And I'm not saying this because they're from Omaha, Nebraska, where we were born and raised. These guys are legit NBA prospects. And first, let's talk about Hunter Sallis, a player that I thought should have came out last year or in 2024. I mean, he had a phenomenal junior year. I mean, we've covered him plenty of times. At least I did before I had to take my break. But I thought he just had a really, really good year last year. I think that he can duplicate his numbers from his junior season, but at the same time, my question is like, I mean, is he going to have like a Dalton Connect type year? I mean, I would have taken him in the first round last year, but I'm gonna just go over some of his accolades. He was ACC Newcomer of the Year. He was first team All-ACC by the Associated Press. He was NABC Division I All-District First Team, ACC Player of the Week in February. And I mean, he just had a really good year, averaged 18 points per game, shot 48% from the floor, 40.5% from three, 78% from the foul line. He scored in double digits all 34 games, had a 33-point game against NC State, an NC State team that went to the Final Four. And then he had a 29-point game against Duke where he was like 11 of 13 from the floor. Really good athlete. Like, I don't know what more he could have done to solidify himself as a first-round pick last year. What are your thoughts on Hunter?
Man, I got beef with Hunter, man. I had him in the top 20 for the good portion of, I guess you could say, May through June. I would have liked him in Sacramento, that one of those last lottery picks, and he decided to go back to school. So I'm not really having no beef with him because, that's just how I talk. But it'd be interesting to see what he can do to improve his stock at Wake Forest, considering how well he played last season. And I think the main thing will the three ball, the big jump that he had from Gonzaga. Again, the attempts were limited, but his first 2 years at Gonzaga was 26% his freshman year, 26% again his sophomore year. Then he jumps to 40% on 5 attempts. So will he be able to replicate that same level of success, all while not, I mean, after a while, they know who you are, but he's not sneaking up on anybody. Definitely not anymore.
Yeah.
So, like, will he be able to repeat that success? Scouts, NBA teams are going to be like, okay, we see what you are. Now let's like really dig into more of your weaknesses. It's a calculated risk. Maybe it works for him, maybe it doesn't, but I thought he should have came out last year. I think he would have played well. Been a first round pick on my board. Again, he did what he had to do. But like I said, I want to see what it looks like this next year. Maybe a tournament appearance is what's going to push the team over the top. Increased ball handling, even though he did handle the ball a lot last year at Wake Forest. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. What do you think he needs to show scouts?
Well, I think that it's almost like he's gonna have to shoot 40% from three again.
At
He
least
shoots,
38.
yeah, if he shoots 36%, which is good, it's going to, be 4 points lower than what he shot last year. And you mentioned he was at 40% from three, but it was on a good amount of attempts. It was on 5 attempts per game as the number one name on the scouting report. And
Yeah.
so, you know, like like I said, I just think that he's in a situation where he has to like dominate again because this is year four. And me and Richard talked about it on the last podcast about a conversation that I had with a friend of mine. And this guy, he's a trainer and his client subpar year and he's going into his junior year, but he's trying to convince me that the guy is going to be a lottery pick. And so I was trying to explain to him that when you're a junior, 3 years of college basketball, you can't show flashes. You can't show potential. You have to put up numbers. And I mentioned all the guys last year that were first round picks that were upperclassmen, from Zach Edey to Dalton Connect to Deron Holmes to Devin Carter,
Devin
put up
Carter.
monster numbers. And
Hmm.
Hunter, I thought, put up really, really good numbers. And so for him, I mean, what is it going to take for him to average in what is considered to be a stronger draft to be a first round pick? I mean, does he have to average 21, 5, and 5 on 49, 40, 80 shooting splits? That's what I'm interested in seeing.
I had him at last year. I think he finished at 43% on jump shots, 41% unguarded, 40%, 46% off the dribble, and he shot 40% in catch and shoot opportunities. Like, he shot the ball extremely well, and it wasn't just catch and shoot. He was shooting step back threes, relocation threes, all kind of off the dribble threes. So it's like I still don't know what more he would need to do this next year. Like, how do you improve on that? Like, those numbers are amazing. And again, there could be a dip, but it's like, matter of fact, I just recently watched another podcast with Michael Redd. He was on Knuckleheads, and
Mm-hmm.
he averaged 22 as a freshman. They were bad. He averaged 19 as a sophomore, and he said he came back to try to improve because he wanted to win. I think they had lost like early in the tournament, and
They were
his junior
bad
year
his
they went.
freshman year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, his junior year they went to the Final Four, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think. But he said his stock his junior year was terrible because his production went down, and he went to a second round pick. And he said somebody told him that had he gone after his sophomore year, he'd have been a top 10 pick. And then you look at it, he got cashed out. He made a bunch of money. He had a long career till his knees like gave out. And I just hope that that's not the same, not the injury, but the whole like getting passed up on the second time around when the scouts see you. Hope that's not the case for Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he kind of snuck up on people because he had some buzz coming into his freshman year, had the 2 years at Gonzaga where he really didn't play much. I thought that he just didn't look confident out there. He played like he was playing not to make mistakes. And then when he got to Wake Forest, he played free. He got to shoot his mid-range pull-up, which was his bread and butter, which is kind of what he made a name for himself on the high school level. But then he showed that he could shoot. And I do think that some teams and some scouts that I talked to earlier in the year were kind of on a wait and see, like,
But they didn't have that same issue with Devin Carter. Devin Carter shot the ball well for 1 year,
yep,
and he turned out to be a lottery pick. And
yeah,
he's smaller. I mean, he had the long, super long wingspan, and he fills out better, like physically, because he's heftier.
yeah.
But like he's only got one great year of shooting under his belt, and it worked out for him. So,
So I'm gonna put you on the hot seat. In
all
your
right.
opinion, why do you think Hunter didn't get the same buzz as a Devin Carter? And why do you think, like, even on like some of the early 2025 mocks, I don't even see people mocking him as a lock to go in the first round. I've seen him second round a couple of times. In your opinion, what are we seeing that other people are missing, or what are we missing that other people are seeing?
Devin Carter, I hope it works out for Devin Carter. He benefited from the Derek White experience. meaning everybody now is looking for that next Derek White rebounding, shot blocking, steal, shoot the ball well, utility guard that can play alongside any superstar. I think that if and Devin Carter may be a son of Derek White. But I think that's what teams, and that's how kind of like the draft works. Like somebody comes out of, not necessarily comes out of nowhere, but there's a player, an established player that plays extremely well, and everybody's like, I gotta find the next version of him. And I think,
Nicholas Vili.
I mean, there's so many. We could have a whole
Yeah,
podcast about
he
should have
got
beens, could
yeah,
have beens, or
he got
sons, or whatever you want to call it.
he got drafted because everybody's looking for the next Dirk. That's just the first name that came to mind.
Man, there's it's just so many of them. So I think that is part of the reason. Again, part of it is the Derek White, and he played extremely well. So I'm not taking anything away from Devin Carter, but I think that helped boost his draft stock because I mean, like I said, he had one really good year shooting. I think he's a 22-year-old junior. So
What are we seeing that others aren't seeing, and what are we not seeing that other people are seeing in this game? Because he hasn't
well,
been mocked on a lot of first round boards.
I mean, you gotta think, man. It's the new thing. All the freshmen are gonna get mocked in the first round. Me and you both know all these freshmen aren't gonna pan out. Just look at last year. How many McDonald's All-Americans ended up in the transfer portal? Like it happens. Not everyone's going to pan out. So, obviously we're gonna talk about Liam McNeely and the Con Kneppels and the Trey Johnson and all these other wings because we don't have anything to knock them on.
Yep.
There you go.
All right. When we return, we're going to talk about his high school teammate, St. Thomas, who just transferred to USC, had a monster junior year. Talk about came out of nowhere. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, whether it's superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. They have over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, and you will always find exactly what you are looking for. And eBay has what they call the guaranteed fit, which means your part is guaranteed to fit every time or you will get your money back. That's because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it is easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and the eBay guaranteed fit is only available for U.S. customers. Once again, thank you for making the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. Now, for your second listen, you got to check out the Locked On NBA podcast because there is no offseason in the NBA when it comes to the Locked On Network, because Locked On provides you a daily basketball analysis from the national and the local experts, and you get it in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed or as entertained as Locked On NBA. It is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, we're going to talk about St. Thomas. St. and Hunter were teammates, and they entered college basketball with like totally different expectations. Hunter was a McDonald's All-American, even though they didn't have a McDonald's game that year. Saint ended up going to Loyola. They both transferred and found like great success at their second school. And then Saint went from Loyola of Chicago to Northern Colorado. It's kind of like he replaced Dalton Connect. And then now he's going to USC. We did a podcast on Saint. I want to say it was back in like January or whatever. It was right around the time his name started buzzing. And then I thought at the end of the year, I thought that he had at least enough of a buzz to get invited to the G League elite camp. I I'm just confused why he wasn't at least invited to that camp. 6'7", 220 pounds. I know you mentioned he's got a little bit of Carmelo in his game. I mean, check out these numbers at Northern Colorado. 19.7 points, 9.8 rebounds, 4.2 assists. Those are incredible numbers. And then I got a question for you about that. Dylan Jones had very, very similar numbers. I thought they were neck and neck for player of the year. I think they're the Big Sky Conference.
Yes.
Saint had a game where he had like 37 and 14 against Montana, had a 31-point game where he had 6 3-pointers. I mean, he filled the stat sheet, put up very similar numbers to Dylan Jones. Dylan Jones was a first round pick. Saint doesn't get invited to the G League elite camp. Yeah, I need to hear your thoughts on this.
I have no idea how that works. I thought Dylan Jones was a second round pick. I didn't buy the jump shot, but you know what? He probably I know he interviewed extremely well because when they were asking him about his role in Oklahoma City, he gave probably the best answer I've ever heard in my life when he said, I've been the guy for so long, I know exactly what you need to be the other guy. It's because that's been my role. But I still don't know how he is as a shooter. And I feel like him and Saint do have a lot of similarities. I guess he's a little more,
On ball.
yeah, he's more on ball, but I can't give you an explanation of why one guy didn't get a G League Ignite or excuse me G League camp invite and one guy was a first round pick. But you know, Sam Presti he can do whatever he wants. He's the man in Oklahoma City. As far as Saint though in USC, it's going to be interesting to see how this works going from the Big Sky to I don't even know what conference USC is in anymore, but
Pack Big Ten.
the Pac Big Ten, but he does the outlier things, which are still going to get him noticed, right? We know he can rebound, we know he can pass. The shooting is going to need to improve, but one thing that we will not question is the competition that he's playing against anymore because he's in the big Pac 2, 12, 14, whatever conference it's
Like
called. So
20 schools in the Big Ten now.
dog, how do you play Rutgers one night and then go to USC on another night, man? I don't ever want to hear anything about a student athlete again, man. I don't
Oh
care
no.
about going to class, man, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, man, I thought that he had a really, really good year. He's not going to be able to sneak up on teams this year, but I mean, I think even midway through the season, he was the number one, two, and three, four option at Northern Colorado. Every game plan was geared to stop him, and he still put up nearly 20 and 10. 20, 10, and 4 in any league, good numbers. And I think that he is a better shooter than the numbers indicate simply because he had to do so much. If you put him in a role where he is not having to create everything for everybody and get him some more spot up opportunities, I actually think that he could end up being the reverse of Jalen Tyson. And when I say the reverse of Jalen Tyson,
Explain
Tyson
that.
was at Texas Tech and he had a limited role, but he shot like 40% from three. Went to Cal, got a chance to play with the ball in his hands, play in a different system, and he showed what he could do that he was kind of limited. I think for Saint, he got a chance to show how he could play as the man where everything was geared around him. Now at USC, I think the role is going to be a little bit reduced, but I think the 3-point percentage is going to go up. And I think at the minimum, if a team is saying like, man, this guy's a connector, he does a bunch of things well, but I don't know what he does great, I think he's going to have the opportunity to show that he's a really good shooter because on the high school level, he was a great shooter. And I think coming into college, that was considered to be his greatest strength or his greatest asset. But I think he's going to be able to show it more at USC because he won't have all those bombs at the end of the shot clock and have to create for everybody.
Yeah, I think this move actually could benefit him if he shoots the ball well because he's going to do, like you said, everything else. He's going to rebound. He's gonna make plays. Even as the man at Northern Colorado, we had talked about on other podcasts that he's very unselfish. So
Hmm.
like he's gonna give himself an opportunity to get drafted in this next draft. If he shoots the ball particularly well, he's gonna, I mean, the big whatever conference he's in is loaded with talent. So he's gonna have every opportunity to show that he can be like a toolsy guy. Um, my favorite kind of role player. They brought him home. I should have, met him at the airport with the sign, but like how Najee Marshall just does everything, I think Saint has an opportunity to do that. He may not be as like dynamic with the ball, but he can do everything. And he's like what they listen like 6'8", 6'9". So yeah,
I've seen
I think
six
this move.
seven. I think I've seen 6'7", like 220.
Okay, so we'll
But
say
that's a good size, especially in
yeah
today's
for a
NBA,
three.
because I think you
Yeah.
can play three and some small ball four. And even
Mhm.
if he's as a small ball four, he's good enough to space the floor where he can play a complementary role. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does in Cali. All right, when we return, I want to talk about another guy from Omaha, Nebraska, that transferred to the Los Angeles. Well, I was going to say Los Angeles area, but he transferred to a school in Los Angeles, and it is William Kyle, one of my top sleepers that I think is going to definitely see his name on some draft boards. Stay tuned. All right, last segment. I want to talk about William Kyle. William Kyle is one of my favorite under the radar sleepers. I've told this story before, but I was watching Zeke Mayo. Zeke Mayo was one of my favorite point guards to watch a couple years ago. I was watching Zeke Mayo, and I
South
ended up
Dakota
having a
State.
what's that?
From South Dakota
From
State.
South Dakota State. He transferred to Kansas, but I was watching Zeke Mayo. I was talking to somebody about, Zeke Mayo, and then they were like, man, it's this kid on the other end of his lobs. And I was like, I seen that kid too. So I go and watch the film, and I'm seeing this kid. He's a freshman, but he's jumping out the gym. He's finishing everything with dunks. I'm like, wait a minute. I know him. I know his parents. I went to school with his mom. And so
And you said people think I'm the older one.
yeah, I mean, that's
You went
because
to school with. All right,
hey,
man. Go
man.
ahead, man.
Hey, yesterday I was talking about I saw Ron Harper play. So and I was talking about Cleveland Cavaliers Ron Harper. I know a lot of people, a lot of these draft guys, they may remember Ron Harper from the Lakers. I'm like, man, I remember Ron Harper when he was, battling pre-ACL Ron Harper. So yeah, somebody called me OG today. I'm like, okay. But anyway,
Man, they
William
called me
Kyle.
Unc at the gym one time, and I was hooping. I was like, "Hold on, man, Unc, man, I'm not that. I don't look that old, man.
Yeah,
Like,
man. When I think of Unc, I think you got a part in your head like Shannon Sharp.
yeah, like I was hooping in some baggy shorts, like Rafer Austin or something. Like, man, my shorts weren't even big. He called me Unc.
But anyway, back to William Kyle. At South Dakota State last year, averaged 11.1 points, 5.7 rebounds, 1.4 blocks per game, shot 59% from the floor. I think he has a defined role as an athletic play finisher. He's still a little raw, still developing. I think if he can just show flashes of being able to knock down maybe short corner jumpers or jumpers from the elbow, I think that would help his draft stock. But even if he doesn't, he just has a game that fits the modern NBA as far as low usage guys that can make athletic plays, run the floor, catch lobs, finish at the dunker spot, and protect the rim. So I think there is a good chance that William Kyle can be drafted. What are your thoughts on William?
He is following in the footsteps of a player who was drafted in the second round with very, very, very similar statistics and a Dembona. Like you close your eyes and you read off those stats. Yeah, I understand there's a difference between where do you see the UCLA was in the Pac-12 last year. I do know that.
Mhm.
So there is a difference between the Horizon and the Pac-12. I get it. So stats don't always tell the whole story, but when you look at it from just a per game statistics per 40 minutes, however way you want to slice it, his numbers are very favorable to a Dembona. And at the same time, a Dembona, they was giving him the ball in the
They're trying
post
to feature
last year
him.
at some
Yeah.
point. And I don't understand that. But you saw what a Dembona could do in summer league, which is catch, run, and dunk everything. And William Kyle is going to be in a very similar situation. He's not going to be a guy you throw the ball to on the block, and that's cool. I hope they don't set that man up for failure. But I'd have to see who's their point guard out there. But he has an opportunity he dunks everything. So catch the ball, run, and dunk. Again, they're in the big Pac 12 24. He's going to have every opportunity to make himself some money and get drafted this year. I think he does have a chance.
So I've heard from a couple people that he's played really well in some of the Rico Hines runs at UCLA. I haven't been in a few
That's a
years, but I
perfect
know
opportunity.
back when I went, you had your pros playing, but then the guys from UCLA got a chance to play
Hmm.
against those guys, and they got to stay on the court. And I think that I mean I it's been a long time since I've been, but you had the guys that are projected to start, and then you may have had like the freshmen or the newcomers all on one team. But anyway, I've heard that he's played well. I've heard that, just in that setting where it's free flowing, you're getting up and down the floor. You got some athletes that he's looked really good. So I'm definitely going to be following him and paying attention to him. I have a couple, I guess, concerns. One, Zeke Mayo was, like I would say he was probably like my favorite or second favorite mid-major point guard last year. I guess I count AJ Mitchell as a mid-major point guard, but I thought Zeke Mayo was a really, really good passer and playmaker. I do think that he was on the good receiving end of playing with Zeke Mayo. And so I wonder now, without because this game is pretty much based off of the playmaker as far as who can get him the easy looks. And then he's gonna play with Adai Mara, who's, I mean Adai can shoot a little bit, but to me, it's almost like it's the same exact situation last year with a Dim Bona, except they were featuring a Dim. And UCLA was, I mean, they just being totally honest. Last year they underachieved, and I just didn't think all their pieces fit. And so one of the things that I'll be monitoring closely is looking to see how William plays with their point guard.
Yeah, man, point guard play is so important for bigs like Adem Bona and William Kyle. Like you need somebody that's gonna set the table because they're not your old school bigs where you're gonna give them the ball on the block. Now again, Adayamara, if he figures it out, that's somebody you feature on the block because he's a very good passer, big, tall, lanky dude, a lot of legs. He would best be somebody I'm giving the ball to on the block, but. Like I said, William Kyle, man, he's gonna have his opportunities. I think this is year three for their point guard, a young dude, Dylan Andrews. But we'll see how it works, especially with Diamara coming back.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I could see maybe if it's, a die in the post and Kyle is cutting. And I mean, I think Mark can shoot a little bit. I think that he is going to be able to space the floor. However, if my guy is 7'3", I don't want to consistently use him as a floor spacer. But then when I look at, his frame, it's all legs, and it's easy for him
All
to get,
legs.
pushed out of his sweet spots. But I do think that he is the type of guy that if you do push him out of his sweet spots, he is able to shoot over the top of defenders, but also find cutters because he is a really, really, really gifted passer. And so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what William does and just seeing what all three guys do. I mean, Kyle and Sane are at new schools. And then like we mentioned in the first segment, what can Hunter do to top his great performance from last year? Last question for you. What do you want to see from William Kyle, or what do you feel like you need to see from him that will help his draft stock, at least get him in the top 60, if not higher?
I don't think that he should be out there trying to do something that he is not going to get paid to do in the future. And I can't imagine that coaches are going to be like, shoot these jumpers. Then at the same time, they were like, give the ball to a Dembona on the block, and that's just not his game. He's not William Kyle, a floor spacer at all. And I mean, if he ever shoots jumpers, like that's a bonus. Like that's something that you just, man, we got lucky with if you end up selecting him. But it's just gonna have to be more of the same what you saw from him at South Dakota State. It's gonna have to remain to be athletic, blocking shots. Again, there's a difference between athleticism in the Horizon Conference versus the uh, Big Pac-12. So, will his athleticism translate? We need to see that. Will that same energy level, all those things translate? Because you're not the most athletic guy on the floor anymore. So that's what I want to see from him as far as like just maintaining his draft stock or developing his draft stock.
Yep. And I read his stats wrong. I read that he averaged 11 and 5 and 1.4, but that was over his career. That was through 67 games. Last year, he was at 13.1 points and 6.6 rebounds, 1.7 assists, which is not bad, and 1.6 blocks per game. But he shot 62% from the floor, but I want to see the field goal, I mean the free throw percentage.
Yeah, I knew that was low.
Yeah, it was 58 last year, 64 as a freshman. But I think that if he can just show flashes of being able to knock down jumpers from the short corners, maybe the elbows, I think that will do wonders for his draft stock.
I agree.
Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. Once again, thank you for making the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast your first listen of the day. Now, for your second listen, you got to check out the Locked On NBA Podcast because the NBA season never ends with Locked On. You get national and local expertise, and you get it in 30 minutes or less. You can find the link to Locked On NBA in the description, so you don't have to search. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Once again, it's Rafael Barlowe with my brother James. We covered 3 prospects from our hometown of Omaha, Nebraska, and we weren't showing favoritism. I think all 3 guys are legitimate NBA prospects. Stay tuned for more individual scouting reports and more in-depth analysis on the 2025 NBA draft. We are out of here.